So I have chosen Macbeth for my modernised performance. Through my research into the context behind the production of Macbeth, I found out that it was written in a very suspended period of British history. The early 1600s marked the dawn of the Jacobean era, and this time was filled with many events key to the duration, such as the Gunpowder Plot. This act of betrayal created an atmosphere of tension throughout London. I find that this atmosphere would have been similar to that much later surrounding Germany whilst under its Nazi rule. From 1933 until 1945, Germany was under the rule of Adolf Hitler. This is similar to how Macbeth leads a tyrannical rule over Scotland in the play, and is one of the many reasons why I feel that Macbeth would adapt well into a more recent Nazi German setting. I'm just going to talk a bit more about Nazi Germany. On further inspection into the German history, I found many factors that could be easily used to adapt Macbeth into a Nazi setting. I discovered that, much like Macbeth, Adolf Hitler started off as a respectable man. Being an ex-World War I soldier meant that Hitler already had a good reputation, much like how in the beginning Macbeth was a brave hero of battle. However, both of them began to gain power, which led to their corruption, and due to these similarities, I will use Hitler's story to shape Macbeth's character in my modernised performance. During my research into the context of the play, I also found that when Macbeth was written, witchcraft was a heavy belief which led to many supposedly innocent witches' executions. This poor treatment is very similar to the treatment of Jewish German citizens during the period of the Holocaust, a massacre which Hitler was a key player in. As of this resemblance, I plan to have the characters of the three witches influenced by the treatment of Jews at the time of these events, as it would allow a stronger insight on their characterization. I'm just going to go through some of the characters just quickly. So, in the production, Macbeth would be portrayed as a high-ranking German officer who was a member of the Nazi Party. His look and character will be heavily influenced by that of Adolf Hitler, and throughout the story Macbeth will continue to rise in power and popularity until the three witches tempt him to commit murder. Following the same format as the original performance, he will kill Duncan, the Chancellor, and then become the Fuhrer, leader, so king, in the original Macbeth. Macbeth's appearance will be very similar to Hitler's, possessing black hair and a comb-over and a toothbrush moustache. He will appear to be in his 50s. Lady Macbeth's character will be influenced by Eva Braun, who is Hitler's wife. It's a natural pairing as Lady Macbeth is Macbeth's wife. So she was able to raise her husband's popularity through her own social circles and spreading truth about him. And this is similar to how Lady Macbeth tries to keep Macbeth in power by constantly defending his innocence, and is why I feel that the two fit well as a single character. Lady Macbeth's appearance will be that of a woman in her early 30s with blonde hair, matching Eva's look at the time she married Hitler. Banquo will be portrayed as a very similar character to Ernst Röhm, who is the leader of the SA. Both share many resemblances, the most outstanding being how they were both betrayed by their close friends out of fear for the power they possessed. Banquo being betrayed by Macbeth out of fear of the prophecy, and Ernst Röhm being betrayed by Hitler out of fear that he, the leader of the SA, started to possess. Banquo's appearance will mimic Röhm's, meaning that he will wear the recognizable brown SA uniform. In the production, Duncan will start off as Chancellor of Germany before he is killed by Macbeth, who then assumes position as Führer. Duncan's character will be influenced by Paul von Hindenburg, as he was in power before Hitler, and like Duncan, was viewed as a good leader. Like Hindenburg at the point in which the production is set, so vaguely 1933 to 1945, representing Hitler's rule, Duncan will have the appearance of a man in his 80s. I feel that in the production it would be an interesting turn to have the three witches portrayed as victims or potential survivors of the Holocaust. This would allow for a greater insight on their character choices and the reason why they tried to corrupt and destroy Macbeth. Also, in the original play, Macbeth and Banquo's reactions to the Weird Sisters might be similar to how a Nazi officer would treat someone of Jewish heritage. This means that this change would give a totally different perspective to the audience, and it would further interest them. The appearances of the witches in this setting will not be too different from that of the original performance of Macbeth, as it will be purely poor, ragged clothing. I'm going to go through some of the story and how real-life events would influence the script. I'm going to talk about the Reichstag fire. In 1933, the German House of Parliament was mysteriously set on fire, and all blame for the cause was shifted to a Dutch communist, which Hitler used to scare the public into believing that a communist attack was imminent. Using their fear, Hitler was able to pass the Enabling Act, which was a decree that gave him full control over Germany, as the Führer. I plan to use inspiration from this event to add to the plot of my production. As this event was the key factor that allowed Hitler to rise to power, I will use it to present the death of Duncan, the key factor that allowed Macbeth to rise to power. Macbeth will start a fire likely at the Reichstag building and killing everyone inside, including Duncan. As there will be no more Chancellor at this point, Macbeth will become the next Chancellor and then later the Führer. We'll talk about the Night of the Long Knives. In 1934, the power and influence of the SA was rising to a point where Hitler feared he could not maintain and control over it. Due to this, he issued a mass genocide of all members of the SA, including betraying his close friend Ernst Röhm. As this betrayal is very similar to Macbeth's betrayal of Banquo, I plan to take inspiration from this event to shape both Banquo's death scene and the royal banquet scene. There is another similarity between these two events, which is the fact that Macbeth held a banquet whilst the murder of Banquo took place, to keep up his reputation, like how Hitler held a tea party whilst Röhm's entire faction was wiped out, to keep up his reputation. Just going to talk about some of the costume design. Here we have the traditional SA uniform, which was also known as the brown shirts, and this would likely be worn by Ernst Röhm and other SA members. And then we have the more traditional black Nazi uniforms, which would be worn by Hitler once Nazism rises to power. And I'll just talk about some of the staging and set. The original staging conditions of Macbeth would have taken place at Shakespeare's Globe Theatre on a thrust stage, and I don't feel there's any need to change this for my performance, as a thrust stage is quite a simple stage to use, and everyone gets a view of the stage. You have less limitations with design for the set than you would have with, say, a theatre in the round. And at the beginning of the production, the set would strongly resemble the Weimar Republic, which is Germany's first attempt at a democracy. I feel that this is a good starting point, as everything was reasonably happy in the beginning of Macbeth, the original play, and so I feel like this would be a good setting to start off with. Then, as Macbeth rises to power, it will slowly become more and more littered with Nazi symbolism, such as the swastika, which I have put right there. And in conclusion, I feel that the events that took place within Germany whilst under its Nazi rule correspond well with the themes of Macbeth. These stories share many similarities and fit together neatly. As a performance, I feel that Macbeth with a Nazi Germany theme would prove to be both interesting and educational to many different audience members.